video is the second half of a two-part reaction video that I started yesterday. So if you haven't caught the first half of this, I'll put the link below in the description section so that if you want to go and watch it, you can. So this is one of my kind of favourite creators when it comes to Americans in Australia. Kaitlyn is married to an Australian living in Sydney and has quite a lot of really good content on her channel where she's looking at Australia through the eyes of an American who's moved here. So this particular video is 20 foods that confuse Americans. And the reason that I wanted to do this reaction is because she thinks outside the box. This isn't your standard, these are different foods in Australia, here's your Tim Tams. I think she did talk about fairy bread at one point, but hey, it is a bit confusing. But, you know, she thought outside the box, and the things that she addressed so far in this video, some of them were quite surprising, and I was like, oh, okay, yep, I've learnt something. So I haven't actually looked to see what's in the second half of the video, although from looking at the images I can see that I can tell what some of the things are, but I'm curious to see what these other things are that she says confuse Americans.
Number 11 is Devon, and I know that it has different names depending on the state or even like what part of the state you live in, but Devon is essentially Australian bologna with a little bit less salt than American bologna. And I know this was like a staple for so many Aussie kids growing up, was like Devon sandwiches and all. That is something that's very similar to a lot of American kids I know, but we grew up with bologna, we didn't grow up with Devon, and at least the bologna that I grew up with as a kid had way more salt in it than Devon does here. But it's basically some processed meat product that is ground up and put into a loaf, and that is a very, very common and very cheap lunch meat over here.
Yep, I remember the stuff well. We grew up on, I think it was called Belgium, which is the same thing. It might have been a little bit more spicy, I'm not so sure. You know, it's the sort of thing that as an adult I have no desire to go and buy any now. I must admit the chicken loaf was pretty good though. But yes, I remember Belgium sandwiches and with a bit of tomato sauce in them. And my dad was a bit creative, so what he used to do was make what he used to call inside-out sandwiches. And these were done in a fry pan. You basically had a bit of white bread with a square cut out of the middle, and you had strips of Belgium around the outside where the crust was to basically stop the egg from coming out. And you basically had an egg that you started at frying, and then you added the bread and the Belgium, and then flipped it, added bread on top, bit of tomato sauce, and that was Dad's version of an inside-out sandwich, as he used to call it. I actually quite enjoyed them as a child. But like I said, I have no desire to buy Belgium or Devon or anything now as an adult, so probably not something I'm going to be having again. Give a shout out down below. Did you grow up on Devon or Belgium or whatever equivalent it was called? Or was it something that you've just heard of but never really were subjected to?
And number 12 still amazes me when I go to the grocery stores because the variety of Arnotts biscuits blows me away. Like, people talk about the variety of foods over in the States, and we do have a huge variety. But if you think about Oreos, there's all these different flavors of Oreos, but it's still an Oreo biscuit, an Oreo cookie. You think about chocolate chips and all the different kinds of chocolate chip cookies that we have over here, in the end it's still a chocolate chip cookie. Arnott's biscuits over here have such a huge variety to them, and they're not all repeats. It's not like you have a lemon crisp and then you have like 6 different varieties of lemon crisps or something. It's not like you have ice Vovos and there's like 4 or 5 different kinds of ice Vovos. No, the variety over here and just how different each biscuit is from each other is kind of amazing. Granted, there are like a dozen different varieties of Tim Tams, but when it comes to the other biscuits, typically the ones that you'll find in like a red, a white, or a blue packaging, it blows me away just how different and creative these are. I just picked up a few packs to bring over to the States for some of my friends and family, and I am so excited to see my goddaughter's reaction when she sees these little TikTok biscuits, because how cute are little clock biscuits for kids? I just love the concept. I love the variety that's over here. They even have a lot of gluten-free options, and we need to get like a change.org thing going on to get gluten-free Tim Tams, because I have not seen those anywhere. I just love the different styles of Arnott's biscuits over here. It's pretty incredible.
Now that is pretty fascinating actually, because I've heard so much about the amount of variety that you can get in American supermarkets. So to hear that Arnott's kind of outstrips all that in terms of variety of biscuits is pretty impressive. Now I'm glad that she's included mint slice on the bottom there, because you know Tim Tams mint slice definitely top of the range. If we take them out of the scenario, what's your favourite Arnott's biscuit? I'm not sure, maybe Monte Carlo is probably for me, but there's probably a few that I could count on as favourites. And yeah, I loved TikTok biscuits as a little kid, and I did used to love ice Vovos when I was a little kid too. They were classic party biscuits, really.
Number 13 are chip sandwiches, and I've heard so many people say that when they were a kid here, they'd have white bread with butter or margarine and then crushed up Smith's chips in there. And I gotta admit, I've had them and I absolutely love them. I'm not even a kid and I still love chip sandwiches, which is so incredibly unhealthy, but they're such a tasty snack. You gotta admit, chips between a piece of bread is just so good. I'm sure there are people in the States who grew up with something similar. Maybe I just didn't grow up in a household where we had chip sandwiches as a snack, but it seems like it's such a common thing for Aussie kids over here, and I just love these.
Okay, so I am possibly one of the few people for whom chip sandwiches was not a staple when I was growing up. I think I might have tried them once as an adult and was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. So, yeah, just I've never really gotten into them. Um, I know a lot of people who love them, and I know it is one of those crazy Australian things that so many people do, but it just not for me. But that said, I do have other slightly unusual tastes. I've mentioned before that I love national pies, which are the Tasmanian meat pies, and I have been known to buy a packet of cheese twisties and to use the twisties to scoop out the meat from the national pie until there's almost no meat left, and then to fill up the pie casing with twisties and eat that. So I probably can't be commenting on the chip sandwiches because that's probably even more unusual.
Another food that I just cannot seem to wrap my head around are puddings over here. Because in the States, pudding is like the Jell-O instant pudding that you would have as a kid. Those little easy pack snack packs, and they have those over here in Australia. But puddings over here are that traditional English pudding. Like when you think the song We Wish You a Merry Christmas and they're talking about figgy pudding, as an American, you have no idea what the heck they're talking about. Over here, those puddings that are like cakes, that normally have some kind of topping on them, they're so good, but something about them is still just so strange because to me, it looks like a really dense cake and it tastes like a really dense cake. It's not pudding in my mind because to me, pudding is like almost liquidy. So as an American, getting used to the concept that pudding is like a really dense cake over here is something that is taking a little while for me to wrap my head around. Maybe I just need to spend a couple more Christmases here for it to finally click. But when I hear pudding, my American brain immediately jumps to those like easy pack snack packs that you have as a kid, not like sticky date pudding that you would have around Christmas.
So to me, those snack packs that she's talking about are more like a form of a custard than a pudding. So I get what she's saying. I hope that whoever's been introducing her to puddings here in Australia has actually been heating them up, because there's nothing quite like a nice hot pudding for dessert. And you know what? Even in summertime, Christmas pudding heated up with custard on top and cream is something that most people adore. I don't do custard, I don't do cream, dairy intolerant, but I still love a Christmas pudding, and I'll usually put ice cream on instead. And meanwhile, imagine living in a world without golden syrup pudding or sticky date pudding. That's just sad.
One huge trend that I've noticed, and I think this is like a millennial generation thing, is that we are the nostalgia generation for sure. And that's not just an American thing. I know so many Aussies who are in my generation who reminisce about what it was like in the 80s and 90s, particularly when it comes to like 90s kids' party foods. Things like fairy bread and chocolate crackles and frog in a pond. For some reason, 90s kids, this was apparently a staple at birthday parties over here. And along with that comes this book. Like, for some reason, the cakes in this book are legendary over here in Australia, and as an American, I don't get it.
I'd be curious to know if there is anyone out there who's never had a birthday cake out of the Women's Weekly birthday cake book, because I know I had plenty of them growing up, and as did my siblings, cousins, friends, etc. And you know, it was one of those cool things about a birthday when you were a kid, that anticipation where you got to choose what your birthday cake was going to be, and then you got it made for you. It was always kind of exciting. And I think in terms of nostalgia, well, for starters, the cakes. That's why that book is so nostalgic and so adored by Australians, because it does bring back those happy memories of when you were a kid and you got to choose this magical birthday cake. And in terms of nostalgia for the things like the chocolate crackles and fairy bread, etc., I think when you look back, my generation, we didn't have those sort of junk food items at home in the cupboard. They were the sort of thing that you pretty much only ever had at parties. Maybe occasionally, if you've gone with your parents to do the grocery shopping, they might buy you a chocolate bar. Or if you're on a road trip, maybe a packet of chips or something while you're driving. But for the most part, back in the 70s and 80s and even to some extent in the 90s, they were really only party treats. You only ever got chocolate crackles at parties. You only got fairy bread at parties, etc. So I think that's why it is such a nostalgic thing. I think these days kids get so many sugary treats all the time that these things would be just taken for granted. It's not the same nostalgia because it's not something that you anticipate when you go to someone's party. I have to say, I think that Kaitlyn's husband or someone in his family needs to do a Australian children's party for Kaitlyn one year for her birthday, with a cake from the Women's Weekly book and with all these various Australian treats. I know she's an adult, but you got to experience these things once in your life, right?
I didn't grow up here. I wasn't raised here. And hearing how many people know this book and love this book and have tried to either make a cake from this book or have had a cake from this book. This thing of kids' birthday party cakes is just absolutely iconic here. And so many people I know have had some sort of cake baked from a recipe in this book. I don't know what it is about that one book that became so incredibly popular over here. There is nothing like that over in the States, trust me. Number 17, and I have a personal love for these, are pikelets. Those tiny little pancakes that you get in a bag over here. Over in the States, they're the size of what we call silver dollar pancakes, so probably about the third of a size of a regular pancake. I just love that you can buy pikelets in little bags over here. And they don't last you very long. Not only because they're really, really good, they don't last long. If you have them on yourself for more than like 2 or 3 days, they go completely stale. On top of that, you don't just have them with maple syrup. You could, they're essentially a little pancake. But over here, it's very common to have it with afternoon tea, with some cream and some jelly. Or not jelly, it's jam over here. Jelly over here is what they call Jello. Having pikelets with cream and jam is so common over here. Sometimes you'll have it with scones or crumpets as well. And they're absolutely delicious. I love them. I also love that you can buy full-size pancakes in a bag over here. There's a reason I'm struggling to lose weight over here, you guys. In case you haven't figured it out, I have a massive sweet tooth, and pikelets have not helped.
Okay, occasionally I will allow myself the guilty pleasure of buying store-bought pikelets. But at the end of the day, they just do not compare with freshly made pikelets. I know I grew up in a family where, every couple of weekends, Dad would make pikelets for lunch or corn fritters for lunch. Occasionally pancakes, but usually it was pikelets or corn fritters or something. I don't think anyone's introduced Kaitlyn to corn fritters yet, because I think then she would probably have to just completely give up on trying to lose weight. I will say that in terms of pikelets and pancakes, the difference here is that pancakes don't have sugar added, whereas pikelets do, and pikelets are far more fluffy than pancakes. But, that's just going on the Margaret Fulton cooking book, which I think so many of us grew up with. But I'm glad that she likes pikelets.
18 is lemonade, and I mentioned this in a video before, but lemonade over here in Australia is so different from lemonade over in the States. In the States, we think of that country time lemonade mix, or we think of homemade with lemons and sugar and water, and that's it. Over here, lemonade is pretty much any sort of lemon lime soft drink, so something like a Sprite or a 7-Up is what's called lemonade over here. And to me, whenever I hear somebody say lemonade, I still think of that old, country time pink lemonade mix growing up with as a kid. So for me, lemonade is a little bit of a shock. I'm getting a bit more used to it though. But when somebody first says lemonade, I still think of the stuff that I grew up with in the States as a kid. And definitely not the kind of lemonade that you grow up with here in Australia.
The crazy irony about that is that if you're talking about homemade lemonade, then it is that whole lemon, sugar and water combo type thing with a bit of tartaric acid or something like that added. So that is kind of interesting. But, for the most part, when we talk about lemonade, then we are talking about the fizzy drink that is the clear stuff that isn't even really overly lemony.
19, I don't know why these aren't a thing in America, because they're so simple, they're so easy to make, they're delicious, and it's great for parties or for barbecues, and that is a potato bake. They're just not popular over in the States. You'll hear people talk about potato scallop or scallop potatoes. That's the closest thing we have to a potato bake. That is something that is just not popular over in the States. And I don't know why, because it's so easy. It's so simple. It's potatoes, cream, cheese, and then you throw in some herbs or some spices, like maybe salt and pepper and garlic and whatever else you want to throw in there. It's so easy to do. It's quick and easy for parties. I don't know why that hasn't picked up in popularity over in the States. but they're so easy and they're so good.
So the problem with creating videos like this in the afternoon is that suddenly I find myself wanting potato bake for dinner. And Kaitlyn is so spot on. Potato bake is just so divine. And it is amazing that Americans haven't cottoned on, because Americans love their cheese. So it seems to me like it would be a really popular dish in America.
Last one on this list, number 20, is the ridiculous variety of Cadbury bars over here. You guys, I absolutely love this. I know that I love having variety. I grew up in the States. I'm used to having variety when it comes to things like candies and chocolates and sweets. But the amount or the variety of Cadbury chocolate bars here blows my mind. And I'm used to variety. Some of them are absolute classics. You have just the regular classic milk chocolate bar, and then you have the Milky Top bars, and then you have ones with mint, and you have ones with these different kinds of candies and mix-ins thrown in there. You have ones with different fillings. You have snack bars, which have like 5 or 6 different types of candy bars all rolled into one. It's absolutely mind-boggling, and I love snack bars, by the way, except for the Turkish Delight ones. If they can get rid of that, snack bars would be perfect. They do not need to have Turkish Delight in snack bars, but that is just my opinion, and y'all know how much I hate Turkish Delight. There's a bonus one, Turkish Delight. It's absolutely disgusting. But the variety of Cadbury bars over here is absolutely incredible. I love some of them. The clinker ones, oh my god, they're absolutely delicious. I love Milky Top. I love the snack bars. I love the breakaway bars that they just came out with. There's just such a huge variety here. Absolutely amazing, and one of, like, it's become one of my favorite things about Australian foods. It's just the crazy variety of Cadbury bars that are over here.
So that's another thing that hadn't actually occurred to me. I just took it for granted that, that's how you get chocolate, with multiple varieties. Admittedly, it's only in the last, 20 years or so that Cadbury's has just gone insane with the number of different options that you can get. But she's so spot on, and it seems like they're constantly introducing new flavours or trying new flavours and then ditching them when they don't work. I'm a purist. I do love just a good old fashioned Cadbury's milk chocolate. But sometimes, if I want a bit of variety, I love the caramel chocolate. And I do love the classics, like the caramel filled chocolate bars and the peppermint filled chocolate bars. So let me know what your favourite type of Cadbury's chocolate is, because I'd love to hear what you think is, spot on when it comes to Cadbury's chocolate. So this brings us to the end of Kaitlyn's list. I will leave the link for the original video down below if you wanted to go and watch it, or if you wanted to just drop over and click like on Kaitlyn's video or leave a comment on her video, share the love. Thanks for listening. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Please hit the like button, and please do leave a comment down below.